Ah, hello. Yes, it's you, the WordNerds. My name is B.A. Williamson, author of The Marvelous Adventures of Gwendolyn Gray. It is the thrilling tale of a girl with an overactive imagination growing up in a city of no ideas. One day, her imagination comes to life and runs amok, and, well, she draws the attention of Mr. 5 and Mr. 6 and a host of other troublesome characters, and gets lost in a steampunk adventure novel, and has all sorts of wonderful shenanigans while learning to control her imagination and save the world. But enough about me. I was never one for tasteless, shameless plugs about my own work, which comes out from Jollyfish Press on May 15th, 2018, for $11.99. Pre-orders available now on Amazon, review copies available on NetGalley, and the soundtrack available on GwendolynGray.com. A few months ago, I received a letter from one of these word nerds, a certain personage of this website. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Williamson, I have recently come across your book, The Marvelous Adventures of Gwendolyn Gray, which seems similar to my own book, The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Bryony Gray. I'm currently in the market for a mortal enemy and was wondering if you'd be at all interested. If you're interested in dueling or perhaps a round of fisticuffs, please get back to me at your earliest convenience. All my best, E. Latimer. To which, of course, I responded. My dear Latimer, what an auspicious day. For how often can one say that one has met one's nemesis? There's such pure exhilaration in such total detestation. Clearly, destiny has conspired to make us rivals. You have thrown the gauntlet, dear lady, and I shall not hesitate to pick it up. I have the honor to be your obedient servant, B.A. Williamson. And we have been the best of frenemies ever since. Now, my dear Latimer is currently indisposed with her rather adorable offspring, which has given me the opportunity to step in and take the reins for a bit. So, let's talk words, nerds. I'm here to talk about ideas, inspiration, which are the heart of my story, particularly avoiding writer's block in the first draft. Blank page syndrome. We've all been there. You have those wonderful ideas and you see them in your head. You picture them in a particular way. You feel a particular feeling, a mood, a tone, a voice. And then it comes time to execute. And we doubt. We worry that whatever we put on the paper will not turn out the way it is in our head. And I'll start by saying that that's a good thing. At the end of the process, it won't be what we had in our heads at the start. It should be better, having gone through the creative process that spawned it. You'll have made changes, made mistakes, sometimes wonderful mistakes, that take you in unexpected directions. You'll have newer and better ideas, and the act of creating itself will alter the shape of your creation. Much like raising a child. You don't want it to stay a baby forever, and by the time it's fully a finished adult, whatever one of those is, it is wonderfully different from what you had initially planned. So don't be afraid of the unknown. You won't have it all right away. Each word is just another step on the journey. We've all had those moments where the words just flow from our fingertips in furious spurts of ink and pixels. And after perhaps hours in your own mind, you look back at what you produced. Hundreds, if not thousands of words, sprinkled here and there with a few particularly sparkling gems that make you say, I don't actually remember writing that. Who snuck in and used my keyboard? But it is rather good, isn't it? Good times. Unfortunately, these events are rare. If you can only write under such conditions, I'm afraid this career is probably not for you. For the rest of us, we must learn to power through the times when motivation is lacking and self-doubt is abundant. But before we write, we must have an idea. Where do these ideas come from? Writers are asked this question all the time, and most give pithy quips that aren't terribly helpful. Neil Gaiman is the only one I've heard give a satisfactory response, but I'm here to give you a definite answer. Ideas come from other ideas. Ideas come from asking questions. What if only, I wonder. My own book is centered around these very questions. As a writer, you must be a curious creature. You must constantly seek out fuel to feed your art blender, as Amanda Palmer refers to it. Ideas and experiences go in, something new comes out. With some of us, bits and pieces remain and the ingredients are more visible, and others, less so. But if you want ideas, you must go find some. Idea advice number 1, live an interesting life. There, that wasn't so hard, was it? But seriously, go out and do new things. Be curious. Have diverse hobbies. Get outside your comfort zone. Meet all kinds of people. Go all the places you can. Go somewhere new and write down what it feels like. The more things you put in your head, the more raw thought material you have bouncing around in there that could collide with other thoughts and fuse together to form a truly original story. So get out of your house, away from your computer, and go do all the things. Unless you're writing a novel about your inner demons, in which case, feel free to hole yourself up and dive into those. Not really my thing. Along those lines, read. Read everything. Now, you're often told you need to keep up with your industry and read everything coming out in your genre. I am not one of those people. I write middle-grade fantasy, but I hardly read any of it. I'm very picky. There's nothing inherently wrong with that advice, so that you're able to spot trends in the market, etc. But the danger of just reading books in your own genre is that you risk your writing sounding just like everyone else's. If you want to be original, you'll want to cast a wider net. If you gather your harvest from the same field as everyone else, your food will taste like everyone else's. Get your ingredients from a more diverse source. Read everything. Read nonfiction. Read mythology and old folklore. Find the writers you love, then read the writers that inspired them. Read your mentor's mentors. Read Marcus Aurelius, Jack London, anime, anything. Quality shines regardless of topic. Tolkien himself wasn't a huge fantasy buff. He enjoyed reading about the linguistics of Finland. And if a Finnish philologist can create Lord of the Rings, who knows where your inspiration will come from. So fill your head with raw material. Live an interesting life. Read interesting things. The weirder and wilder your ingredients, the better your soup will be. Now that we have ideas, it's time for step 1. Write. Write a word, then another one, repeat. Thank you. I think that's all that needs to be said, so I'll just... No? Oh, okay. I'm told I need to be more specific. So, step 1 is always button chair, hands on keyboard. Carving out time for your writing is essential and is a whole other topic, big enough to be on its own. Needless to say, you can't write if you don't write. Write anything. Write badly. There's a wonderful expression known as train ugly, and it is especially true for writers. I dabble in singing and acting as well, and I have never been able to stomach watching or listening to myself. It's awful. I will, likely, never see this recording. But writing is the only art form where I can stand to analyze my own work, because in writing, your performance is not static. It is always possible to go back and change it to suit yourself. You can fix the things that make you cringe, destroying them so that no one else will ever know what a horrible fraud you are. Your writing isn't permanent until it's published. So with that, sit down and get started. Write horrible, awful things. I have notebooks full of them. Then, go back and make them better later. Don't do that on your first draft. So, after you've started writing your wonderful words, leave them on the page. Editing yourself during your first draft is the first step towards madness. You will catch yourself up in self-doubt and criticism and spiral until you've spent weeks on the same 3 paragraphs fiddling to get them exactly right. Instead, think of your first draft as your kitchen sink draft. Throw it all in there and sort it out later. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Don't worry about it. Just throw it in. Am I spending too much time describing the fairy queen's dress? Who cares? I'm having fun. Throw it in. The kitchen sink draft. Don't think too hard. Just let it flow. Inevitably, the specter of self-doubt will rear its familiar head. There is a solution to this. I call it, listen to your mother. When I was young, my mother always said, you can do whatever you put your mind to. Whatever I made or drew or wrote, she would beam at me as though I were the next James Joyce. This is wonderful. You're amazing. This is brilliant. Obviously, these are mom goggles. Not every macaroni hand brand is a Rembrandt. But when you're hitting that point of self-doubt, it's important to find your mothers. Find your cheerleaders. Find these people who tell you how awesome your work is, even when it's terrible. Find people who will lie to you. Or people outside the writing circles who honestly have no idea how bad you truly are and will fawn over you like Charles Dickens for the mere act of stringing sentences together. These are your lifeline. When you're drafting new things, regardless of which draft you're on, these are the people you need to listen to, and believe their flattery with all your heart. This will do wonders for your confidence. Listen to your mother. You're an amazing writer. Save that self-doubt for later when it comes time to edit. As you may have noticed, I tend to overwrite, and self-doubt is a very useful chainsaw for cutting down unruly chapters. It's all about creating a healthy emotional roller coaster between extreme narcissism and crushing anxiety. But let's say you, like so many who eat too much cheese, are well and truly blocked. When you encounter a wall, there's only two choices. Go through it, or around it. Sometimes you can just power through those moments, keep that kitchen sink in mind, write something you hate, and keep going. That doesn't always work. So to get around that wall, you have to trick yourself, distract yourself, get out of your own head, and think in a different direction. Like getting rid of the hiccups, or Douglas Adams' advice on learning how to fly. You have to throw yourself to the ground and miss, distracting yourself so completely at the last second that you forget that what you're doing is impossible. Distract yourself and get around that block. Some of the best ways I've found to get out of my own head is to engage with the work in a physically different way. Try cartooning your scene, even if you can't draw. No stick figures. Everyone can at least draw rectangle people. Storyboard your scene. Think in pictures, not words. Personally, I like to use this. And my lovely fountain pen. Now, the beauty of handwriting is that it seems so much less real than on the computer. After all, paper doesn't count, and usually no one is going to see it. That's a very freeing feeling. And in a fountain pen, trying to write in a lovely cursive script, so much of my brain power is being turned toward forming the actual letters themselves that I become quite distracted from any nagging doubts I have. I have a very nice pen, the color of ink that I like, and gorgeous handmade paper, the twofold upshot of that being that the physical act of writing is very pleasant indeed. And when I'm done, even if my writing is awful, at least it looks beautiful. I've written some of my trickiest scenes in here, like a little experimental lab where nothing really counts for real, but in truth, it's produced some of my best writing. I was so convinced that it didn't matter what I wrote, and so focused on moving my pen correctly, I still hate cursive R's. I cannot find a way to write them that I like. So focused on that I didn't have time to worry about whether or not it was any good. Slowing down is great too. You really focus on each individual word, and in ink, you can't get focused on editing yourself as you go. It creates a different, more deliberate headspace, one word at a time, all of which is wonderful for getting around that wall when you can't just constantly re-edit the same 3 paragraphs. Once I knew a woman who would write her first draft using watercolors. Then she would throw the painted notebook away and start over again from scratch and have the whole thing rewritten from memory in a week, not caring if it was different from the original. Needless to say, we all hated her and were wildly jealous. So, even if you don't painstakingly chisel out each word of your novel into a stone tablet, you can find ways to engage with your material in a way that short-circuits your normal writing pathways. Get away from your computer and keyboard and play. Never forget to play. So go get ideas. Live an interesting life. Read adventurously. Sit down and write. Write terrible things. The first draft is the kitchen sink. Don't question it. Just throw it in and fix it later. No editing. Listen to your mother. Find those people who praise you beyond all evidence of reality, and when you're stuck, find a way around. Draw, paint, handwrite, dance. Do something different to short-circuit the critical part of your brain that says, I'm not good enough. I'm B.A. Williamson. You can find me at bawilliamson.com and B.A. Writes on social. Go take a look at The Marvelous Adventures of Gwendolyn Gray on Goodreads and NetGalley and Amazon. I wish you all a pleasant evening. Good night, words. Good night, nerds.